So where are you living in? What area are you living in?
I'm in Caswa now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of far.
It is. It's in a weekday you're talking about anywhere from 2 hours to get in.
Oh,
but I like it. The air is fresh and clean.
I think Moses is
my area as well. The area.
Yeah, you know, and
I think Moses is trying to start. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Please, greetings and welcome to the Ministry of Future monthly meetings. This is our third meeting. We commenced, we had our inaugural meeting on October 25th, and then the subsequent one on November 29th. We postponed the meeting for December, the month of December, because students who were mainly the target group were on break. So we commenced this month. Mr. Kwesi Pratt is supposed to be the resource person for today's discussion. However, he informed us he has been asked to, he's elsewhere, he finds himself elsewhere and not in Accra, and it's impossible to be here at the moment. So he has advised that we reschedule and move him to another month. So that will be considered. However, bearing in mind that there is the need to revise or know whatever we have started out with, especially on the first topic we discussed Ghanaianization of the body, mind, soul and Africa's resources. And in the second month we discussed ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization for total African liberation towards a methodology for self-transformation. We're giving some assignments at the end of these discussions, but we've not been able to delve to discuss the assignments that we were given. So for the fact that Mr. Kwesi Pratt will not be here today, we would like to use today's discussion to review the lectures we had in 2015. The first lecture we had with Dr. Maulana will be reviewed, and then we'll discuss the second lecture and the assignments we had with Dr. Kambon. The next on the agenda will be forming an editorial committee for the Ministry of the Future newsletter and any other business. Having said that, at this juncture, I would give the floor to Dr. Maulana to help us with a review of the maiden lecture.
All right. Thank you very much, Moses. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm very happy to be here, but I'd like to say right at the outset that we must give homage and respect to Dr. Kambon. That's the reason that we're on this platform is because of his vision, because of his understanding of what we're trying to do. And so, by virtue of that, I want to say right at the outset, Dr. Kambon, we appreciate you understanding what we're trying to do. Now, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I know some of you, whether it's your first time here or not, you may be, pondering the thought in your mind, what is the ministry of the future, and why are we gathered here, blah, blah, blah. We don't have time to mention the innumerable problems that we have in Ghana, on the African continent, and in the African world, because we have serious problems. But what is happening is the metamorphosis, if you will, in genesis of coming to where we are right now, is that I was interviewed on Viasat by the host Kojo Frimpong. And Kojo is one of the Ghanaians who spent probably a lot of time in Britain, and he's got his British accent, and he's loud, and he wants to, debase anyone that's coming on the program if you're not ready. So the name of the program was, and we're going to show excerpt, it's about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, just to prime you. And the emphasis on the program was, what are we going to tell our children for the future? 20 years from now, where will we be? What will we tell our children? And so this was basically the topic, and it was profound. And in the course of this dialogue, one of the things that I tried, to get him, to shape him up and let him know that our independence, of course, has been meaningless without it being linked to the total independence, as Osai Jeffo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said, of the whole African continent, and for that matter, the whole African world. But one of the problems I elaborated on in talking with him is that our educational system here is one of the lingering problems from the time of independence up until now that's holding us back. And I'm adamant on that. And so I said to him, and of course, because there was so many questions that were thrown at me, and there was another guest on there, I forget his name, Hankford, he was the educationalist. And so many questions were thrown. So I said, look, Kojo, there's a formula that I see that we as African people seem to be lagging behind, especially amongst our youth. And I want you to take note, audience, right now, what I'm saying. I said that the creativity of our children's minds, Ghanaians' mind, Africans' minds, is not being used. We have been trained and conditioned to do cut and paste. And so I want to know, how do you tap into the creativity of a human being's mind? And I came up with a formula. Creativity of the mind is linked to the knowledge of self. I want to repeat myself. Creativity of the human mind is linked to the knowledge of self. Now, it doesn't mean that if you don't have knowledge of yourself, that you're stupid old. No. You can go, like many of our young people are doing, getting their degrees, but you're not creating anything at all. You're getting your skills and everything, you know what I mean? And it's the beneficiaries are going to other nations, etc. Look around here in Ghana. I mean, if we look at Ghana for an example, I am told that the only thing that in the field of creativity, we can say at the genesis level, were the market women and the fishmongers that created, what do they call it, palm oil soap. And that's how we get Sundial, come to be an international soap of repute. Look, we got Noose. What did they create up there? We got Legon. What? Now, I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. What has come out of here? We got Cape Coast. But these institutions should be in the forefront, creating things to make our lives better lives. And they're not doing it because our children, all the way from creche, primary, JSS, senior, secondary, up to university level, is being conditioned, you understand, to cut and paste. So I'm saying creativity of the mind is linked to knowledge of self. And that's why I say it needs to be a paradigm shift in the educational system, where we need now to dig out this knowledge of our past. And I'm not talking about some, like Kojo said on the program, are you talking about drumming and dancing? Because this is what people normally think about when you talk about African. I said an African-centered educational curriculum. And it's not to say moving the mathematics, the sciences. No, but what we want to do, leave those in place. But what we want to do is put the right founders of those disciplines. Because Isaac Newton didn't create the laws of physics. Our forebears knew about that long before Khufu's pyramid was put up. So the long and the short is that creativity of the mind is linked to knowledge of self. So I want to say that first. Now, the other thing is that I want to get this out. That the damage that has been done to us over the period of, let's say, colonization, Europeanization, it has caused us to actually hate who we are. I mean, you may not buy into that, but I tell you, deep in the deep recesses of our minds, we look in the mirror, and many of us would say, oh, mirror, mirror on the wall, why did you make me the blackest of all? Let me get down to the chemist shop and bleach so I can turn my skin into a more fair complexion so I can move forward. This is what's been instilled in our minds. And when we go to church, and I know we're in a Christian country, we look at that image of this white Christ, and it is a lie. Not because Maulana says it's a lie, but I can show you 40 years of research to prove to you. Even the late Pope John Paul II admitted before he died that Yesu ben Yeshua was a black Cushite, and most likely the blood that flowed in his veins was a descendant of many of the Ghanaian ethnic groups that come out of the Middle East to come down into this area. You understand me? And so, but by virtue of the fact that that white Christ image is there, our children see that when they go to church and at school as well. And I know what I'm talking about because I went through with my daughter from creche in Tetrati, Chapel Hill, all the way up Labadi Wireless over here to St. John's. I attended all the speech and prize speaking, whatever ceremonies. And they force our children to go to chapel service on Wednesday mornings at 8:30. You understand? And they see this white Christ. So what that does is it becomes a subliminal, deep-seated psychological block in their mind that Christ was a white man and that all white people that we see are brothers and sisters of Christ. So therefore, I should give all white people the same respect that I give Jesus Christ. Because after all, nobody wants to have a bad relationship with Christ or go and slap Christ. So, you understand me? And so that's why these people have been, when I say these people, Europeans have been able to move in African societies almost with impunity, no matter what they do. Because deep in our recesses of the mind, yes, master, yes, master. And it comes from that white Christ image. So I'm saying we got to deal with that. And of course, that's what the Ministries of the Future partially is about. Now, on that same note, as I said at the outset, much hatred has, let's say, been cultivated in our veins. We are jealous of each other. You want to admit it? We're envious of each other. We're distrustful of each other. We backbite each other. All of that has been imposed upon us, and has become like a callous sore within us, and it's difficult to shake it off. But I have practiced the extreme of microscopic surgery. I'm coming with a blade to cut out this cancer. It needs to be operated on, and that's what this program is about, to remove that. So I went through a little bit of expense here to make up some copies so you can look into this personality dilemma that we have by virtue of white racism and its system dynamics that have caused us to be what we are. And so I would like to pass out copies. I don't have copies to give to everyone. So what I would do is start at the top to give it to I want you to have one. Then Moses, Dr. Z. It's called the Willie Lynch Letter. Madam, I'm coming because I have to respect some of the organizations that are here. Charles, you from the Wedger Brigade Project. But Moses, who is Evans and some of the others from the coalition.
Yes, I'm expecting them. I will create copies for them. I can get copies.
Young ladies, share that. Brother, where are you from? Well, you got Moses can help you on that. Okay, Madame.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, there's quite a few pages in there and quite a bit of information. And so what I would like to do at this point, we're not here to discuss that. You can read it, and it is self-evident, the content, once you read it, of what I just talked about and beyond. What I would like to do right now is to just show the clip, if you will, on the video screen of how the Ministry of the Future derived. And then from there, Moses, I'll wrap up with the presentation that I gave at the inaugural launching. And then I'll hand it over to Dr. Kambon.
Okay, really quick, I've been trying to get it queued up, and I'm having an issue with the DVD Ram, so if you can talk while I'm trying to, hopefully I can get it settled. If not, we may just have to move forward.
Did you go into, it's only about 2 minutes.
No, it's not able to play. I'm having an issue with the machine.
Oh, it won't play on there. Oh, wow.
So if we have another machine, or I can just try, what I'm going to try to do is.
Did you go into a computer and it didn't register?
No.
Might it need to be cleaned or this?
It's not from there, it's from the driver here.
Yeah, I think it's because it was formatted to fit universally. But if he doesn't have the software in there to read it, but what's it, VLC, media player?
Yeah, that's what I was trying.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Maulana, were you saying that as a result of, you were, I think, trying to make the group know how the Ministry of the Future came about?
Yeah.
And you're saying that it was a result of this
The Viasat interview. And I downloaded, reserved only 2 minutes here as a primer, really for the audience sake, to see there's dialogue between the host, who is Kojo Frempong, and presenting the question very strongly that we need some kind of solutions, and it should come up within 25 years on how are we going to take care of our children in the future. What are we doing today to prepare for that? And so this was the genesis of coming forth with the ministry of, because that's what I said on the program. We need, like South Korea, for an example, and it's in there. South Korea was in a similar situation with Ghana going back 50 years ago. In fact, Ghana was ahead of South Korea and Malaysia. If you don't know that, Ghana even loaned Malaysia, I think it's about 10 million for their palmery. And look at Malaysia today, and look at us today. So what it was that I pointed out that fact that South Korea had drawn up a development plan and said over the next 50 years or 25 years, we need at least 25,000 petroleum engineers. And we're going to institute a program within the educational system to get that. And I was saying that's an example. And that's how probably the window opened to say, if we have a ministry of the future, then we can look at the present, the past, of course, and the present problems that we are having, and we can thrash them out and project into the future at this moment how we're going to go about solving that. In other words, like a think tank. A think tank. This is how European nations are moving and able enough to sustain their growth. They have institutions that are called think tanks, and they use the brilliant mind. We have Ghanaians here with brilliant minds. Many of them on the streets selling dog chains and CDs because they can't find jobs. I mean, go around Dankwa, if you think I'm joking. Go around saying, yes, brilliant brothers and sisters, but they can't find work. And these are the minds we need to tap into to get to the deep recesses of that intellect that they have and creativity. And we can move forward. You see, but absent of having the requisites, because learning is not a process, and creativity is not a process of osmosis. It doesn't happen just because it happened. It has to be critical thinking, methodologies put in place, you know what I mean? And we can do that. So that was the basis of how this came about out of Viasat. Now that we have it established within the framework here, I went to Moses. Moses is the founder, as you probably know, of the African Youth Improvement Foundation. And I've done several programs with him. So I sat down with Moses and Dr. Kambon, and I said, we need to do something like this. And can we have a platform to do it? And Dr. Kambon, of course, agreed that we could use his platform at the Institute of African Studies, where we are today. And I'm projecting that out of this, once, you see, Malcolm X, the late Malcolm Shabazz, or Malcolm X, if you know of him, he made some profound statements throughout his life, but one of the ones that still resonates in my mind, and I shall never forget, he said, in order to bring about a solution to any given situation, the first thing you have to do is to identify the problem. Once you identify the problem, Malcolm said,
you have 50% of the solution going in your behalf. Now, you if you don't know, you should you should be looking to say that many of our people today don't have a clue of what our problem is. If you think I'm joking, you can take a microphone and go down to the heart of Makola or anywhere in Accra, and for that matter, anywhere in the whole of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and ask the people, say, do we have problems? They say, yes. Can you tell me what the problems are? They'll be throwing out this, be throwing out that. Many of our people don't have a clue. And in leadership, which is very important. So we felt that at the grassroots level here, with the Ministry of the Future, that we can lay out this myriad of problems that we have, and we have them. And we can methodically, you know what I mean, address these problems, especially with the youth. Because, you know, when you get past, I don't mean to be prejudiced, but I prefer to try to impart my knowledge to the youth. Because when you start getting gray hair and get up to be about 40 years old or so, it's difficult to get many of our elders to understand. So it's going to be difficult, so I don't waste my time trying to convince many of the elders. My target is the youth. You understand what I'm saying? That's where it lies. And so, Doc, how's it coming?
I'm restarting, so it's
Okay. So just to be quite direct on it, Dr. Zed, this was the genesis of how this came about with the Ministry of the Future. And so, be the case that we have met with the inaugural launching, as Moses said, on the 26th, what is it, 26th of October. In that particular meeting, I launched the program, and it was launched with the theme, the Ghanaianization of the African mind, spirit, body, and soul. And let me just say, since we're talking about Ghanaianization, what does Ghanaianization mean? Well, I used as a yardstick of measurement so our people could understand in that meeting that China, which is a global giant today, but if you wind the clock back about 50 to 60 years, China had the similar problem that we as Africans are having today. In fact, there were signs posted in San Francisco, California, where there's a lot of Chinese people live, in the 1950s, where it had in Japanese restaurants and many American restaurants, no dogs or Chinese allowed. I repeat myself. No dogs or Chinese allowed. Because, you know, in French, chien is dog. And in French, Chinese is chin. So that was posted. But just to bring the point home, one Chinese with vision at that time, called Mao Zedong, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct, Chairman Mao, he came with a plan of Chinaization of the Chinese mind, body, spirit, and soul. And just it was a very brutal type thing because China was so low. But Mao Zedong came with the Chinaization of the mind, body, spirit, and soul. And within 12 years, 1 decade, China was virtually turned around. And what did Chinaization meant? He wrote a book to support that particular principle. And it meant, for an example, you question your particular philosophy. For an example, I ask you, how do you eat? Do you eat your food like a Chinaman, or do you eat your food like a European? In this case here, we're talking about Ghana. Ghanaianization. How do you dress? Do you dress like a Ghanaian, or do you dress like a European? How do you wear your hair? Do you have a jerry curl? Do you have wigs on your head? To represent the fact that you're ashamed of your natural hair? Do you bleach? Do you understand? All of these things are going for deep examination. Because what you're trying to bring out of that is the Ghanaianization of the Ghanaian's mind, body, spirit, and soul. Now, once you can get to the root of that and the foundational base of that, then you can start building, as they say, for a more productive, self-reliant, and better Ghana. How do you worship? Do you worship a deity? Yes. What kind of a deity do you worship? We all know what kind of deity we worship here. We all go to church on Sunday and we say, thank you, Jesus, the blood of Christ. This big mural. Some people in their homes, in their bedroom, can't go to bed at night unless they give homage to this big mural with a big blue-eyed, white-skinned, blonde-haired person they call Jesus Christ.
Caesar Borgia. Caesar Borgia.
The biggest lie that's ever been told. But if you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. And until somebody comes along and juxtapose it, you know what I mean, and challenge that lie. And this is what we're talking about here. Now that African scholars have come on the scene, African nations have gotten their independence thanks to the struggle of our forebears like Osai Jeffo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and many of the others, Marcus Messiah Garvey, the Malcolms. I mean, I could just name them. Jomo Kenyatta, you understand what I'm saying? Patrice Lumumba, that gave their lives and what have you. Out of that has created a spark, you know what I mean, of life and destiny for us to look from an African-centered point of view. So by virtue of that, you know, we now can see that in order to forge ahead and become a self-reliant, totally unequivocal, independent people, we got to, first of all, Ghanaianization of our mind, body, spirit, and soul. Because certainly, I can never see a Ghanaian with a European mind bringing about total self-reliance as a Ghanaian and for Ghanaian generations to come. And that's what we have right now. We have black faces, if you will, but we inside is totally a European, a Eurocentric mind. Yes. And we love them better than we love our own people. Are you aware of that? We love them and they don't give a damn about us. And the way the world is being shaped today, it is a fight regionally. There is balkanizing, galvanization of regionalization of nations for their very survival. And the essence of their survival is resources, land resources. They need land that is rich. And the only rich land that is virtually virgin today throughout all the other lands on the planet is Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa. Ghana is blessed with every resource you can possibly think of, and many other African countries. But we don't control those resources. And that's what this Ministry of the Future, we're getting ready to look at. Look at our cocoa resources. Everyone knows that the best cocoa in the world, from the days of independence, even before then, comes from Ghana. But Ghana doesn't even set the price of cocoa. Ghana doesn't even control the price. Gold. Gold has been stolen from this nation. I have calculated from the days of the archive. Go down to the archives of Ghana and look about the Portuguese and the amount of gold that they were taking from the Gold Coast in the 16th, 17th century. It was over 150,000 pounds sterling. Now that was big money. Today that would be up in the hundreds of billions. Gold has been stolen from this country for over 500 years. And this country is still rich today with gold. But what have we benefited from the gold? And see, until you get control of these resources, and there is a way that we can control them. The same thing with other resources, diamonds that we have. And the most valuable resource that we have is the human resource, the human mind. We're not even in control of our own minds. Are you aware of that? And so until we get control, this is what the inauguration, I'm moving on and I'm into my subject matter now. This is what the inaugural launching of the Ministry of the Future was about. The re-examination of these particular issues and educational disciplines that we have. And to find out where do we stand. Because, first of all, a people that is living on land and do not control the natural resources of that land is virtually an invisible people in the world. Because if you're living in a people who are landless, like Africans in the diaspora, of people who are landless. You know what I mean? They are not considered to be wholesome people before the United Nations. So these are particular issues that needs to be addressed within the framework of the Ministry of the Future. And so what we did within that inaugural launching, we zeroed in to be quite specific about what are we going to do. And we had volunteers within there to volunteer to take on the research and analysis, the historical research and analysis of Ghanaian agriculture. And one of the main crops, as I said a moment ago, was cocoa. So we have an astute committee that's had 2 months to endeavor, and they have their report together. And it is not only for you to go into the findings, because we know that we don't control those resources, but moreover, we want to know what are the recommendations that you are making on where we now can get a grip and control those resources in the future. That was in cocoa. We also had one to deal with religion. Because, you know, coming back to the point on religion, let's just be clear about this and quit kidding ourselves. If you want to know where a Ghanaian is on a Sunday morning, just go outside and stand at any junction, and you will know where Ghanaians are on a Sunday morning. They're in the chapel. In the chapel. I'm living out toward Kaswa. You can't even get a car from Galilee on down to Wedger because of the prayer camps in the tens of thousands. Yeah, and the reverend ministers know in hard times they're bleeding our people to death because our mothers, you know what I mean, women are very gullible, very naive. When conditions are very difficult, everybody turns to a deity to say, help me. And the reverend ministers come along and say they are the representative, the intermediary of God. And they're to help, but we know that they're all about money. You see, so we established a committee to deal with that. And like I said, we have to be clear about that. If you're talking about correcting our problems, how in the hell are you going to correct the problems as a Ghanaian, as an African, when you believe your deity, the most sanctity of your soul, is coming from the Vatican in Rome or the Archdiocese in London, Europeans? I mean, this is unheard of. I mean, just look at that. No people in the world that I know of see their deity outside of themselves, except we as Africans. Do you know you can go to the most primitive Eskimo in the ice, way up in the snow, and ask him to draw a picture of his God? He will make a picture of the God that looked like him. You can go to the Native American Indian, who they say was a savage, the red man, and have him to draw a picture of his deity. It looks like him. You can go to the Asians, and we know they got the Buddha. You go to Japan, they got the Shinto. They look like them. But when you come to Africa and say, African man, black as we are at the root of our genetic heritage, you see a big white Jesus with blue eyes and blonde hair. Now, don't take that lightly. Don't take that lightly. Because how are you going to move forward, that I ask you, when you got this embedded in the deep recesses of your mind, that the creator that created you was a white creator? You understand what I'm saying? And the creator that monitors your behavior and belief is a white creator. So that has to be an immediate, truthfully, paradigm shift. And the only way that you can make that type paradigm shift, you have to have the right requisite historical information. And that's what we're bringing to the table, to show you that all of these things have been fabricated as lies to control our mind, body, spirit, and soul. Because when you control the human mind, you control everything that they stand on. You understand what I'm saying? So, having said that, ladies and gentlemen, the economic aspect because you can do nothing in any society without having economic development. But let us be clear about one thing. If we put these things in their proper perspective, economic development, successful economic development. Can you move forward with economic development and self-reliance in a society if the society does not respect who they are, if the society does not have confidence in the race of what we are, and if the society believes that everything that God has created on the earth is coming from the European, then how can we as a society become self-reliant economically? So it's an impossibility. So that simply means that is something that has to be corrected. And out of these committees, we created economic committees to look into that. We created educational committees to look in that, because everything begins at the educational level. And if we don't get control of our young ones in the educational institutions, I think it's a moot point for us to sit here every week or every month and talk about what we need to do, when at the same time the educational system is manufacturing our children to be other than what they are, to be not proud as an African, but to know more about European civilization. And you see the result of that today, that by the time that we have young people reaching the age, even some don't even reach teenhood, they're trying to cross the Sahara Desert or brave the waters of the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea in rotten wooden canoes at the peril of their life to get to Europe. And Europe is telling them, we don't want you here. If we catch you, we're going to send you back. And on the way, you have at least about a 10% drowning spoilage. And yet, they're still going. What does that tell you? It tells you something here, we are failing. And where are we failing? That's what the ministry of the future is about, is to identify where are we failing. And I'm saying one of the initial points where we are failing is in our educational system. There has to be a paradigm shift. Now, when I say paradigm shift, I'm proposing, and this is what the Ministry of the Future is proposing, we're proposing that all of our schools must have an African-centered educational curriculum. Now, that doesn't mean removing the sciences. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean removing the arts, the letters. No. But what is happening in all of these disciplines that we have in our school, all the way up to Legon at the PhD level, it is giving homage to Europeans who are supposed to be the founders of civilization. I don't doubt the fact that Europeans have made contributions. But when we get into the depth of the founders of civilization and the various disciplines that we have, philosophy, see, you never even know that. Religion, mathematics, you understand, architectural engineering. The disciplines go on. We can delve into our history and show that it was African people that founded these disciplines. So that's what needs to be incorporated into the African-centered educational system. Instead of saying, what is it? What is the one that's supposed to have founded medicine for the Greek? Hippocrates, the hypocrite that he was. And it comes from the word hypocrite, Hippocrates, and he was a hypocrite because they have given Hippocrates the credit of founding medicine. And when you delve deeper, 2,500 years before Hippocrates, there was a man called Imhotep, very short black man. And I believe with the analysis of the historical background, especially with Osiris or Asar, that he comes out of the Kwa family. And we know Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, in this area is really the seat of the Kwa people. And these were the centerfold intelligentsia in ancient Israel, Mesopotamia, and of course ancient Egypt, the Kwa family. You can even look at the etymology of the names. But Imhotep And they know because they stole the record from Imhotep, changed his name to Esculapius, and that's a Greek name. How would I know? Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I want to tell you this. I've said it in the inaugural meeting. Do you know it only takes one generation to erase your genetic memory bank? It only takes one generation to control your mind and erase. And how many years are there in a generation? 25 to 30 years in a generation. If I take your children for 25 to 30 years and isolate them from their heritage of the past, you are wiped out. Genocide, menticide. Do you understand? And this is what they're doing to our children. You see, so we have to now, in the African-centered educational curriculum, we have to restore the truth of who were the founders of these great disciplines of religion, philosophy. We have the information here, so I'm not up here blowing hot air. I'm telling you, we have the information, and it's not fabricated. And mind you, the Europeans have the true information also. They have the information that we who are scholars and researchers have. They have it, but it is hidden in the vault. Hidden in the vault. The best way that I can explain that is the late Dr. John Henry Clark. I don't know if you heard of this man. Dr. John Henry Clark, a scholar that he was, he said that the Europeans were the first people on the earth that colonized knowledge. People had come and put humans in chains. We know that. But we have never had anyone to come and colonize the knowledge. That means all of your records, manuscripts, and everything. Hey, burn it. Burn up that. Imhotep, change his name from Imhotep to Esculapius. Change his name to Isaac Newton. Change his name to so-and-so, so-and-so. Say that King James wrote the Bible. You know what I mean? When we know that the original transcript, manuscript of the Bible goes back, in the time that black people were in the Middle East. But anyway, these are the things that we have to address at the foundational level in education. Because you cannot have economic independence, with a mind that does not know who he or she is. And creativity of the mind, what did I say? I ask you the question. Yes. Creativity of the mind is linked to what?
Knowledge of self.
So on that note, Moses, since we're unable to run, it's not necessary to run the video anyway, I'm coming back to the home base before I finish up, is let us instill in our minds the principle, ideological thinking, since we are Ghanaians. Let us say Ghanaianization. What does Ghanaianization mean? Ghanaianization of the mind, body, spirit, and soul. Madam, my dear sister, if I were to point to you just for 10 seconds and I'd say, tell the audience, what is Ghanaianization? Can you tell us what Ghanaianization would mean and what you've heard?
So Ghanaianization is the mind, body, spirit, and soul. Dedicated that before we can be on ourselves reliant.
It must be rooted in Ghanaian culture, unadulterated culture, Ghanaian African culture, Ghanaianization of the mind, body, spirit, and soul. That means you grow what you eat what you grow. You make what you wear what you make. You understand what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying all of us are without fault. As they say, Christ say, he who is without fault of sin, let him cast the first stone. You know, but we're talking about self-reliance. We're sitting here speaking English. We're sitting here with European shirts on, European pants, European shoes, European drawers, underwear. We're sitting here from head to toe, Europeanized. Do you hear what I said? I'm sorry to go there, but this is what we have to do. You're going to have to put on Ghanaian drawers. You're going to have to put on African drawers. You're going to have to put on African clothes. You're going to have to wear African hair. You're going to have to unbleach the skin. You're going to have to Ghanaianization of the mind, body, spirit, and soul. And you must question and challenge another Ghanaian if they are not Ghanaianized. And Ghanaianized, as I just said a moment ago, that's what it means. Our rooted culture that we're in. It's enough of this foolishness. It is time for transformation to get serious. Because if we don't do it in this particular arena, in this particular generation, our children will suffer in perpetuity. I'm telling you. So Moses, enough for that. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to disclose, but remind me if I not covered some of the things that needed to have been covered on that first presentation. Hello. And I must say, I have a few copies here left. Those of you who have come late, I cited that because of the Europeanization of our minds, we have jealousy of each other, we have hatred of each other. I know you won't admit it out front, but it's there, deep-rooted inside of us. We have distrust of each other. And I'm saying that all of this comes from the Europeanization of us, our mind, body, spirit, and soul. And that's why we need to de-Europeanization by ReAfrikanization of the mind, body, spirit, and soul. So I brought some copies here of the infamous Willie Lynch letter. And I passed it out to some, and I have about 4 copies left. Yes, I'll save one for you. And I've given, is there any others who come in late? On this note, I'd like to bring what I had to say in my presentation to an end. And Dr. Kambon, the floor is yours, sir. Okay. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to pick up from where Dr. Maulana left off. He was mentioning that we should do things in an African way, part of ReAfrikanization, and that was actually what my workshop was about, ReAfrikanization. And I want to start with a quote from Dr. John Henrik Clarke, who Dr. Maulana also mentioned. Now, this is a quote from Can African People Save Themselves, a lecture by Dr. John Henrik Clarke. And in it he said, we might have to go back and make a principled decision. We might have to build great industries. We might have to start with our underwear. The reason I say start with underwear is because no one is looking at it. If we get our seams wrong, we've got time to get it straight. Then we go to our shoes and our suits, and we learn something that is basic to the reemergence of modern Japan. There are 2 things the Japanese would not let their conqueror take from them: their self-confidence and their image of God as they conceived him to be. And I wanted to start with that because in my own session I said that this is something that I wanted to work on. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the progress I've made since the last thing, because as Dr. Maulana said, none of us are already there. But there's a concept in ancient Kemet where they would say mi-re, which is to be like the sun, or mi-ra, to become like the sun. And the idea is of the perfectibility of the human being. And in African cultures throughout the continent, when you say someone is a human being, it means that this person is kind, is generous, all of these good concepts. In the European concept, when you say, oh, I'm only human, it means I make mistakes, I'm bad, original sin, all of those things. So it's an entirely different concept, even though the word we're translating them, I want us to understand this. So again, this is something that I was working on, and I'm proud to say that I was able to make my own drawers. I'm not going to pass them around. They're clean. I'm not going to pass them around, though. And I'm actually wearing my own drawers, and I was so happy about this. Because this is a quote from Dr. John Henrik Clarke, the underwear challenge from this speech. So all of these when I mentioned last time that in '98, I want to say, I said every day for the rest of my life I would wear clothes made by African people. Well, some of the clothes got old and some of the collars got torn and ripped. So these are some of my old clothes. If you knew me a couple years back, you'd be like, "Oh, that's that outfit you had on your birthday.
Oh, it's
That's the
powerful.
outfit you had on."
African prints and all.
Right. So all of these were my old clothes that I reused, reduced, recycled. I took them to a seamstress, and she made these. So all of these are brand new. I got one on like this to match my outfit for the day. I'm not going to show y'all that. So as soon as I got them, I put them on, and I was in the house. I was dancing, and my wife kept trying to take a picture of me. I kept running out the room. I was like, "No, you don't need the picture." But this is something that I think is very tangible. It's it's laughable, but it's very tangible. That if we say, I was at Abosokai working on my car, or having my car worked on rather, and there was a brother who was going around selling drawers. And he had two sets. He was like, these are the unused ones, and these are the Obruniwewu. The white man has died. These are the reused ones that we imported. And I said that you have, and he was like, yes, it's only recent that we've gotten the new ones, that all these years we've been importing our drawers. And I said, so you're telling me that these are drawers that a white man has been wearing, some syphilitic, I can't even imagine all the diseases, gonorrheic disease, white man has been wearing this, and then you're just going to put some Omo on it and wear it yourself. So I say, you have all of these seamstresses, you have people who will go to a funeral, so why can't we just take our own cloth, you see, and just make our own? So I don't want to beat that into your head too much, but I do want to beat it into your head too much. That this is something that all of us can do. We can go to Makola tomorrow and say, we'll take up the John Henry Clark Challenge. And for my own thing, I think sometimes we get very broad, we get very huge, and we say, all right, I want to, change the world. I want everyone in the society to change. But sometimes what happens is we exhort for everyone else to do something that we ourselves have not done and are not willing to do, which, is one technique, right? You can lead from behind. You can say, come on, you all go ahead. You can be in the U.S. and say, go repatriate. Everyone go back to Africa. And you're sitting there in your Mercedes-Benz in America. That's one way, and some people will hear that way. But another way is to actually do these things yourself. And then you say, come on, I know what it's like here. The water is fine. Come on in. Right? It won't burn you. It's not too cold. It's room temperature. It's fine. So that was one thing that I've been working on in the last time, just in terms of ReAfrikanization of myself. So, and that was the final frontier. They say space is the final frontier. I said, no, the drawers are the final frontier. Because I always wear clothes that are made by African people, my bag made by African people, my shoes made by African people. And I said that I wanted to work on drawers. I wanted to get a Kantanka car. I priced them out. I'm working on my house before I get the car, which will be made out of mud bricks. Dr. Maulana was saying what came out of KNUST, that they have a tech press where they build, you can use it to make your own blocks out of mud. And this is what I'm working on. I already sourced a brother out of Mampong who, he showed me some of the houses in the community that he's already worked on using different atapami methods and mud block methods. So this is something that I want to do in my own life. And then after I do it, then I'll broadcast and say, everyone come do it. I don't want to do it the other way because that can, not always, but it can lend itself towards hypocrisy and contradiction, right? So that's that. And I also mentioned I want to renounce U.S. citizenship. So I spoke to someone at immigration. He said that within 2 years he would be able to work on it. That's plan B. What I want to work on is plan A. There's somebody who's pretty high in the government who brought me some spices from Ethiopia, and I want to see if he can make some things happen. Some of us here know what I'm talking about. But that's, just in terms of my own ReAfrikanization process, things that I would like to do in the near to distant future. I still want to get the Kantanka car, but the cheapest one was 71,000 Ghana cedis. And I said I will build my house before I drive around, That's still a very high priority, but having my own house here is more of a high priority. Also, as you know, I homeschool my daughter, my children, all of them. And this is my oldest daughter, Ama, and this is her reading an Anansi story. I may play some if we have time later. This is her reading an Anansi story on the origin of life and death. This is another video of her learning mathematics using Yoruba binary probability. We do this in the Yoruba language via Odu-Ifa, and this is what you were just asking about. So she learns Ifa. There are 256 possible combinations in the divination system, and this is binary system. This is what the computer is built on. And the actual originator of the PC, Dr. Mark Dean, was a black person. I don't know if you know that, but please do the research on it. So we go from the ancient binary probability understanding to what we now know as binary code. This is also my daughter practicing African combat capoeira ACOF, which is coming up. Dr. Sharita spearheads that. I will also be doing a workshop on that for people who want to learn how to defend themselves, their family, their community, their nation, and their race. It's very important. All of these things that I'm saying, I feel are very important. If you resonate with them, hopefully you will take them up. This is also my daughter using Chi to learn numbers in Medu Necha, so-called hieroglyphics, right? So as we talk about we want to get free, how are we going to get free speaking English and writing Latin script? Even though it's ultimately derived from Medu Necha, we don't just want to, put a black mask on it and say, well, now it's ours. Well, what were we doing before that? Dr. Maulana was talking about, the original so-called Jesus was black. Well, what were we doing before even the original so-called Jesus? And you'll find that entire story is plagiarized from Heru, as Dr. Maulana speaks about very frequently. But we don't even know about Heru. We've never even heard of that term before. So the thing is, we can say all of these things are black, but then what do? Do we say, all right, now we know that we're black, so now we have self-confidence, let's go work for white people? Or do we actually learn those texts and find out what are the lessons inside of the text itself? If your ancestors thought it was important enough to drag 2-ton stones and boulders and then carve them 2 and 3 inches deep into stone so that their descendants, can be able to read it, and none of us can read any of it, what's the point? So we want to actually get at some of those lessons as well. This is Amma learning Wolof, which is a base 5 and base 10. And you may wonder, well, why am I teaching her mathematics in Wolof, which is base 5? It means it starts over after you get to 5. So ben, nyar, nyet, nyent, jurom. Then jurom ben. So the ben is still the 1. Jurom nyar, jurom nyet. So I want her to learn to think in various ways, that these are the same numbers you already know in Chi, but you can think about them in multiples of 5. In Chi, it's still the base 10 system. And even when you look at the words, edu, aduonu, adjiasan, adjianan, the du is in there, and then the san is in there. The du is in there, the 9 is in there. So now she can actually understand. It's the same in English. We say 20, the T means 10, the twin means 2 tens, 30, 40. So she can think about that way. Yoruba is a base 20 system. So everything is based on what is it doing in relation to 20. Is this 2 20s? Is it 3 20s? Is it 3 20s with 10 subtracted from it? So even to say a single number in Yoruba, you have to do multiplication, you have to do addition, you have to do subtraction. And you can think about all of those with division as well. And then also, this is her learning pre-algebra in Akan, solving for X. So these are some of the things that I'm doing in the education section. And I'll bring it back to what we term the Kambon dam, so you can see where all of these things fit in the area of economics, in the area of education, and in the area of social. In the area of social, since we were talking about this, I told people to get off of Facebook and use African sites such as Abibitumi Kasa. So one thing that we just came out with is a mobile app. So here I have a phone made by black people. This is RLG Uhuru Aku. The Uhuru translates to freedom in the Kiswahili language, right? So now I can use my African design and assembled phone, even though they get the parts from other places, but so do all the other companies. And I have also a browser, a Crocodile browser, made by a 13-year-old and I want to say 9-year-old in Nigeria. So I have that as my default browser. I have Abibitumi Kasa as my default social app. So there are over 1 million users of Abibitumi Kasa, and it's the largest 100% African-owned website in the world that I know of, right? We don't allow any non-Africans to be a part of it. So even if there are sites that are larger, none of them are 100% African-owned. right? You have to write in what your race is to do it. So we have that on Android. We have the same thing on iOS. So for those of you who have either of those types of phones, you can now interact with Africans from throughout the world who are talking about African liberation. And again, we talk about how can we say we want freedom when we're not even willing to click on a black site. That's the easiest thing that you can do. That's easier than building your own nation, even making your own draws. All you have to do is press a button. And if you're not even willing to do that, I have a question of how much you're willing to do any of these other things that are significantly harder, right? So that's that's what I've done, also developing the apps. Another thing that I've done is this is a text that I'm working on the ancient African origins of Pan-Africanism. And as I mentioned, it's one thing to say, oh, well, we invented this, we invented that, so now let's take that self-confidence and go work for white folks. That there are lessons that our ancestors inscribed in stone for us to learn, and this is one of those lessons. So we're working on a book. I'm working on this with a brother out of Ogwa, so-called Cape Coast. And this is an inscription that tells you about the ancient Africans' origins of Pan-Africanism, Africans coming together to defeat their Eurasian enemy. So if we're talking about the Chinese, we're talking about all these enemies, Eurasians, Europe and Asia, just one big thing. What did we do in the past? It's not something that's theoretical of, well, how do we combat the Chinese coming in? What did we do in the past? So I'll read this to you. And you see here, the Medu Neter is here, and then also the translation. I'll read the translation. It says, when His Majesty took action against the Asiatic sand dwellers, that's who we're talking about, the Arabs who have come in and taken over North Africa, which we will have to take back at some point in time. So when His Majesty took action against the Asiatic sand dwellers, His Majesty made an army of many tens of thousands from all of Upper Kemet, from the south Yebu to the north Medinit in Lower Kemet, in all of the sides of the house, right? All the two sides of the house, and from Sejer. Now we're talking about, so we have Kemet, that's what you know as ancient Egypt. So he brought all of the two sides of the house together to fight against these Asiatics. Then what did he do? He went to Nubia, Sejer, and Ken Sedru, from Irjet Nubians, Mejan Nubians, Yam Nubians, Wawat Nubians, Ka'ao Nubians, and in Chemeland. So here you have a land which means Kemet, land of the black people. So first off, you're saying just from your constitution and your name itself, it means this is a land of black people. And now what are you doing? You are gathering up all these black people to oppose these Asiatic sand dwellers who are trying to encroach on our land, right? So this is very profound because it also lets us know, well, what should we do about these Arabs who have come in and stolen our land? Well, we should look at the lessons of what we did in the past. We came together, race first, not saying we all have to do the exact same thing, wear the same thing, whatever. It's saying that all of these were different types of people, but they were race first. They said the fact that we're all black, we're going to come together against these who are out for self-preservation and encroaching on our land. So these are some of the things that I want to bring to the people. I'm working on, as I mentioned, this will be a book. And I'm doing it in such a way that every single line is not just giving you a translation, but you can actually use each line to learn the Medu Neter. So you can see where it says Nehesi as Nubians. You can see where it says Yam as the particular ethnic group of Nubians. Oftentimes, Egyptology is there just to make things opaque. You can't see through it. It's like, look, we are the only ones who know it, and we'll just give you the translations, right? I want for you, when you read this book, to actually be able to read Medu Neter. And it's also good for me in my own ReAfrikanization process. That's that. And then also, this is something that I'm working on with my daughter, and this will probably be the first book that she publishes if Mama Z done beat me to it. But this is the Instructions of Ptahhotep. This is the oldest complete text in the history of human beings. Even though Her Jadef was before, Kadimni is before, those are all fragmented. This is the oldest book, full text, in the history of all human beings in the world. How many people have heard of Ptahhotep? Put your hand down. I already know y'all know. All right, so this is the oldest book. Now you would think, and again, Dr. Maulana talked about the education system. I would submit that we don't have an education system yet. We have a schooling system, but we don't have an education system. Because if we did, you would know the author of the very first book in the history of all human beings. Just objectively speaking, who thinks that that's an important accomplishment? Right. But we know Shakespeare. Right? If we had an education system, just objective, let's be completely objective, let's pretend like we're not even Africans. What's more important, the first author of the first book in the history of all human beings, or some syphilitic guy up in the butt crack of Europe? What's more important? I don't want to bias you. I don't want to bias you towards any answer. But this is what we're translating from Medunecha into Chi. Right? It's very, because what you have access to, you have a Chi Bible, right? So if you want to pray to imaginary white people, the image of Caesar Borgia, the illegitimate son of Pope Alexander VI, that image that you have, even though they had the image of the black Madonna and child in Europe, and it's still there to this day, they decided intentionally, we're not going to bring you the black image, right? They said, we're only going to bring you the white one because we want to do what? Enslave you, colonize you, and now neo-colonize you, right? So we're translating into Chi, so we're getting pretty far. We said in Chirechiremu no free Odikro ne Ochiame no Kredifo Patahotep. And we keep going. So each line we have the Medunecha, we have the transliteration with the sounds, and then we have the Chi coming underneath it. I would also like to go through it again once we get done with this and do it with Yoruba. So it's project-based learning. So I'm not just telling her, oh, your ancestors were great people, so now go off to the U.S. and be a lawyer for some big white firm with self-confidence because you know your people did good things, right? No. What are the lessons inside of it? All of these, this is talking about statecraft and political science and interaction, human interaction. If we started off at primary and every single minister, future president had to read this, you will see an entirely different nation, because it tells you how to interact with someone who is in anger, who is of a higher rank than you, and how to calm them down. Someone who is of equal rank, and how to interact with them so that people know that you are the one who is upright and just. Someone of lower rank, not to abuse your power. All of these are lessons. Let's not just say we wrote. We had the first writing system, which is true. Before Phoenician script, Mesopotamia, any of that, this dates back 3400 BCE, right? We can know that, but I want us to actually learn what those lessons are inside of that. So these are some of the things that I've done myself that I think are okay. But now what I want you to do, does everyone have a sheet of paper? Or you can turn over to the back of what the agenda for today. And really quickly, just to put all of this in perspective, the point of all of this isn't to just pat ourselves on the back and say, look at how good we're doing. The point of this is total African liberation from under white world terror domination and Eurasian hegemony. What does that mean? That means we do not want to be ruled by Eurasians, by our past, current, and future enemy. So if you don't want to be ruled by Eurasians, and in Ptahhotep they say, one who obeys his belly belongs to the enemy. One who obeys his belly belongs to the enemy. That means that if you have a taste, created taste and desires, as Amos Wilson talks about, for their clothes, that means you have to go to them. You have to stay on good terms with them. There's a proverb in Chi, "Udidi fie someone na wanon yedim." Udidi fie someone na wanon yedim. Udidi, if you eat fie in 30 houses na wanon yedim, then you can't speak in a harsh way. Because you know you're dependent on this person, this person, that. You may have something truthful to say. You may have something just to say, but you can't offend this one or that one, or this one or that one. This is your IMF and the World Bank and HIPIC and all of these other houses that we're eating inside of. So if you're saying you want total liberation, that means work, right? That doesn't mean free to, which is what they try to. There's a concept of to be free to or to be free from. They don't mind you being free to. They will bring gayism to you and say you're free to do that. They will bring you a woo draws to you and they'll say you're free to get this. They will bring you a Accra Mall. They'll bring you Samsung phones. They'll bring you, all of these Mercedes-Benz cars. They'll say you're free to do any of those things. But now try to be free from them. Look at what happened to Japan when they tried to be free from them. Right? Let's look at the Zapatistas in Central America when they tried to be free from them. What the U.S. government did is they said, we're going to send in helicopters and bazookas to make sure you can't be free from. They said, we just want to live by ourselves. We don't want to be globalized. We just want to grow our own food. They said, you're not allowed to do that because that is such a huge threat. Even in the U.S., you can look at MOVE in Philadelphia. This is a black group who said, we just want to live in our own way. And the entire block in Philadelphia was firebombed. They killed the children. They dropped a bomb on children, men, women, elderly. Killed almost all of them, except for a few who are able to get out who are still around. Pam Africa, Ramona Africa, a few of them who are part of that movement. Right? So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about being free from and free to, in the sense of free to do these things that are African, not free to do whatever they say is useful for Eurasian hegemony. So as we look, what I want you to do is I want you to set up your paper like this, and you'll recall how we did it last time, that you can look at everything in terms of how does it fit, and you can look at every single thought, word, and deed that comes into your brain in terms of who originates it and who benefits from it, who originates it and who benefits from it. And sometimes you can only get one, but usually one will point you to the other. So if you know that these Eurasians originated this white image of so-called Jesus, which is Caesar Borgia, you know they originated it, then you will start to think, well, how do they benefit from it? In the area of psychology, right? In the area of spirituality, in the area of economics, because now you have to go pay your tithes and all of these other things, right? So they benefit from it in each one of these areas. Just this one single thing you can look at, how does it fit? And some of them will overlap as I'm even explaining to you. You can look at, let's look at my draws. So who benefits from this? If I have draws that are made by African people, right? For me, I benefit psychologically because I say, yes, I have crossed the final frontier. Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, a people who cannot make their own draws cannot run a nation. That's his criteria, is draws. So I poured a libation. I said, Dr. Clarke, I think I'm ready. Right? So I have a psychological benefit from that because I'm free from Eurasians in that area. Right? I don't have to go to them and enrich them in the process. So that's psychologically. In the area of economics, I don't have to go to Obrunyewu. I don't have to import them from Tema. I don't have to do all of those things in the area of economics. In the area of social, again, social and economics are more closely connected than sometimes we realize, because what economics is just saying, I agree to socialize with you. I will walk into your store. I will greet you. I will pass this back and forth, this currency back and forth, and then I will leave and go about my business. That's a social interaction, right? So all of these things, I'm saying I'm cutting off that social interaction, and I'm only doing this. So I've given you a few examples. This is in the area of ReAfrikanization on a group scale. And then we also have ReAfrikanization on an individual scale. Below that, you have subtle suicide, what my father termed subtle suicide. Back in, I want to say, the late 80s, he wrote a book called Tips on Quick and Easy Ways African People Can Commit Subtle Suicide. Basically, the idea is that if you are not down with African liberation, we see you trying to kill yourself. You're not brave enough to do it outright. So you do it with what you drink. You do it with what you eat, what we'll be talking about, ACOF. You do it with what you wear. You do it with the chemicals you put into your hair. You do it with, all of these things, the medicines that you take, right? So you're committing subtle suicide in the sense that Europeans want you to die, but they also want to make money off of your demising process, right? So they don't want the death to be that quick. They say, keep taking this drug. Now you have AIDS. Take AZT every single day until you die. And now they have maximized your demising, right? So we can look at that subtle suicide. And basically the idea is, if you are not down with African liberation, here are some tips on quick and easy ways you can commit subtle suicide, so you can stop breathing up all this good air for those of us who are about African liberation. Hurry it up, go along. Sure? Oh yeah, that's him. And then beneath that we have white terror, domination, and deceit. And these are things that what my father terms as cesspoolians, that if you look at Europeans, they have made the world into a cesspool. So they do various things. They will give you things that damage you psychologically. We already mentioned a few examples in terms of gayism, in terms of Christianity, what we call Christian sanity, in terms of praying to a rock 5 times a day and then say you are against idol worship. Now, all of these things are things that they do for domination and deceit. You can see what they do in the area of culture. You know, they'll put lights all around and have a white Santa Claus, and you're saying, oh, yes. This is what they call soft power, to get you to turn your back on. You were completely independent for thousands of years. Everything you needed, you could build your own house. This is where we get into ideas of development, right? You could heal yourself if you're sick. You can give birth to your own child and deliver that child. Every single thing you needed to do, you can take the bark of a tree and make it into cloth. Everything you needed to do, you could do it. Now, if I ask you, can you do any of those things, we may be challenged. I say, can you go out to a tree and make your own cloth that you can wear? No. All right, can you go out and turn the soil and stone into your own dwelling? No, unless I get some cement and whatever. If I say, can you do this, can you do that? So basically, in many ways, especially if we're talking about liberation, we've retrograded, right? We've gone back, if that's the goal. If the goal is to be basically a neo-slave or neo-colonial subject, we've gone very far in that area, but we haven't gone very far in terms of doing for ourselves. All right? And then, so we can also look at Eurasians on a group level, and then also an individual level. So this is your project. Now, does anyone have your assignment from last time? I think I'm seeing a project from last time.
Yes.
So what I did is I gave examples of myself, things that are very personal. Usually I don't tell people what I'm doing to re-Africanize and de-whitenize, because I'm on my own scale, one. And then I'm doing it because I think it's correct. Not that I want round of applause and pat on the back. You don't ever have to know about my draws. But I'm telling you about my draws.
You should
For inspiration.
Tell everybody.
You think I should? I will.
Everybody.
I will then. So I challenge everyone else to be as upfront and go away from every black person should do this. We should all unite. We should all and really put up a mirror to ourselves and say, what am I doing? Because if all of us say, I have done this, that is the we. So, Moses, feel free to share.
Okay. Our warrior.
Go ahead.
Yes. For our warrior ancestors in the area of psychological or emotional, I mentioned Dr. Henry Clark. His books and other things have worked very well on me. And on current Africans, I mentioned Dr. Kambon and Dr. Maulana. They are being part of their lectures and education. I've learned a lot. On culture and history, I mentioned Okomfo Anokye, uniting the Asante Kingdom. Yes. On current Africans in culture, I mentioned a dance ensemble I know, Atenteben Ensemble, and they are doing their bit to. It's like is an African instrument, and they are doing their best to get Africans to love African music through the use of African instruments, the atenteben and the drums and the others. In the area of economic, I mentioned as a warrior grandsister Marcus Garvey for his Black Star Line ship that he embarked on. I also mentioned current Africans, the batik makers, who are replacing the Obroniwawu in the system. Yes. On health, I mentioned Imhotep, the father of medicine. On social or celebrity status, I mentioned Philip Beho, who composed the Ghana national anthem. I think the words used in that music, if current Africans or the youth can learn, they can go. It's like it can help in our ReAfrikanization process. I also mentioned Nas and Muta Baruka. Nas is a hip hop artist, but he has taken a trend to liberate Africans through his music by mentioning certain African historians and the likes. I also mentioned Muta Baruka. He's a dub poet, and through his music he's able to educate a lot of people. Political war, I mentioned Yasantua as a warrior grandsister. She fought for the to defend the Asante Kingdom. And today, current Africans, I mentioned Mugabe. Yes. On ReAfrikanization, psychologically, I've resolved to read, to know myself or to know African history through African historians like Dr. Henry Clark and the others. In terms of culture, for the purpose of this discussion, we are having discussion in English, but I try very well to speak Twi a lot to my friends and also to listen more of African music. In the area of economics, I patronize more African products in terms of clothes and the likes.
Soaps.
Soap, yes. Nkuto for cream. In the area of education, as part of my ReAfrikanization, I said I'm reading more African books. Yes. And on health, I use more African. For instance, if I have malaria, I'll rather cook some neems and some herbs. I resort more to the use of African herbal medicines. And I'm interested in more in preventing diseases than to cure them. In the area of religion, I don't practice any Eurasian religion, whether Christianity or Islam. I look at God within myself and my race. Yes, on social and the celebrity, in the course of ReAfrikanization, I'm no more into the X-rated songs, the hip life that characterizes hip life and dancehall. I'm very selective in the kind of songs I listen to, especially some reggae artists, like Raskuku, who are proud of their culture and of their race and are singing about it. As part of ReAfrikanization, in terms of politics, I do not advance or discuss, or I do not support today's MPP NDC due to the neo-colonial nature of their administration. Yes. Okay, the reverse is I have the reverse for my Dewhitenization process. In terms of book, as I mentioned, I no longer read books by European authors. Yes, doctor. I think I have some places to fill. Yes, and in our subsequent meeting, I can delve deeper.
I think he's done well. Let's give him a hand. So what we see, he's given us an example of is moving away from the paradigm of, I want all black people to do this. If all of them would change, if they would stop going to church, if they would stop doing this, if they would do this, and he's taking it upon himself to actually change. And what this does is it empowers him to actually give himself a mouth and a voice to speak without hypocrisy. In ancient Kemet, they used to speak about ma'akeru, which is to say true of voice. So after you say everything you wanted to say, then you close out with ma'akeru and say, I am true of voice. So he can now speak and say, I have done these things. I'm not a hypocrite. I'm not telling you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself or I haven't done myself. Right? Does anyone have anything else that from last time? Did anyone write down anything on your ReAfrikanization or Dewhitenization?
Well, I committed myself to really learning the tree language. You know, it's my shame. I've been here 16 years and I don't speak the language well. I live across the crowd. So everywhere I go this year, I will be carrying my tree book and, you know, asking for help. So I'm serious about it. Yes.
If you didn't write it down, what have you done? What can you point out that you've done in terms of ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization? Sometimes they are both flip sides of the same coin. Sometimes as soon as you ReAfrikanize on one issue, you've already started to Dewhitenize on that same issue. Anyone else? Can you think of anything you've done since we last met?
What I now realize is I begin to see that most of the religious grouping that we've been following so far were mentally misleading us so that they have more benefit and we have confidence in the white race. But now I realize that all these things are folly. So therefore I see that when they say idol worship, I see them as because many of the things don't exist when it comes to the time of Jesus and all these things. Nobody exists like that. There was a story like that, but not belonging to the Michelangelo kind of story that which people are still believing and taking it very serious into their heart, which they pray to Jesus to do everything every day. But I realized that I de-whitenize myself through that process and realize though the stories are there, but no, I don't credit it back to the white system as it was in the past. So I think it's one way of knowing ourselves. And sometimes more confusing because people turn around and hate ourselves through that because we never realized that these things were firstly done by our forefathers. For example, when I was going through, they say the 10 Commandments from the Jewish or something, this after Moses had finished speaking, then thunder strike. In my village, if anybody who not speak the truth or there's misunderstanding and they are looking for it, when they strike thunder, it's equality and justice. But now they let the people so much scared of that. Then they say today I'm a Christian, so I don't believe in that. Now it make evil have taken over the society. So I realized that even if they want to be a real Christian, they will not be the type of result that they are getting today, but it will be more kind of seriousness within each other, truth and righteousness. But now because of they try to de-whitenize the people's mind, they whitenize the people's mind to see evil as part of society. Now evil become what people praise. So exactly within their Christian culture, that is what they even have to stand against if they want to be a real Christian. So they are also confused in the way of just praising the white supremacy. So when I go deep into this is what I always realize. And also, like for Islam, for example, you can't go to Mecca with all the millions still with Africa. So they say we are poor, but they don't sympathize when it comes to religion. Everything else is sent to the Western side. And even when you go there, you are not regarded as a European Muslim, but you are still rated as an African Muslim. So I think that we need to desist from all these things to have our black supremacy as it was in the beginning, so shall it be as the end. Because black man was the first, so no race can teach us what God's supposed to be or who God's supposed to look like. But first, I don't realize this thing that now when the whitenization of the mind I begin to go deep and realize all these things. That's my own story that they reframe for their own supremacy. So we have to bring that back to our own, how it will suit us as we have to live. All right.
Thank you very much. Now, for anyone who wants to read the 42 declarations of innocence from which the 10 commandments were plagiarized, you can go right out into the hall. All 42 are written out, and then also a short write-up about Ma'at, which was the original deity who was associated with truth, justice, righteousness, propriety, harmony, order, and balance. So these are the principles. And the 42, they said, we can't do all 42. Let's just do 10. I think we can manage 10. And that's what you have been bequeathed now. But if you want to read the full one, you can go out there. Another thing that he brought to mind, just in terms of the ReAfrikanization piece, this is something that I didn't mention, but I went to a friend's recording studio out at West Legon. And as I mentioned, I do an African combat science called capoeira. And it's done typically to music. And typically it's done to Portuguese. In modern times, it originally came from Angola. But a lot of the Angolan languages, such as Kimbundu, Kikongo, have been wiped out. And now they only sing in Portuguese. So as part of the ReAfrikanization of capoeira, now I only sing in African languages. So if you go to another site, Abibi Fahundia, that's different from where I passed around. AbibiFahundia.com, you can see a video of me singing the capoeira songs in Chi, in Kikongo, in Wolof, and in Yoruba. Right? So this is, again, part of Dewhitenization of capoeira and the ReAfrikanization of it. All right? So again, once you are serious about this, in every single area of your own life, you'll be like, how can I get past this? How can I do better in this area? My enemies are getting too much benefit in this area. How can I make them benefit less in this specific area? Would anyone else like to share any changes that you've made? Not what everyone in the world should do, every black person should do, what you yourself have done.
I will take this opportunity to share this. One thing that in general I have realized in life is that I always say this and I always continue to say it. It is as human beings that decide what we should be. You know, one thing that we are, all human beings are different from other creatures. What makes all human beings differ completely
what you yourself
from
have done, because you're talking very abstract
Oh,
about all human
okay.
beings.
What I would
have
say
you
is
done?
that what I have done is that I have taken upon myself, to believe really in nature rather than religion. Because looking at religion, I see religion as a group of individuals that decide to believe in something. And once you don't go the same way, they see you as either an enemy or somebody who is not ready, who is not seen as human beings. Now, looking at this, I would use these two religions. Well, I'm a Muslim, and you see, when you go with Christians, they say, oh, Muslims are bad, this. Notwithstanding looking into the fact that it is a choice of one person to decide to be this, and at the end of the day, behave otherwise. Because one thing I see within me is I pick my choice. And one thing that makes me different is a choice that I have. And notwithstanding, having a choice doesn't mean you should believe exactly what people say. Because I always say one thing. Reading the Quran was written by someone. The Bible was written by someone. You were giving birth to come and meet it. Whether it is true or false, you would never know. Because you see what is there. And then they tell you this is true. And you believe it is true. Once you believe it, it becomes part of you. And when someone teaches you something out of that, you say, oh, well, this is not part of me. It is because this is what I believe. And that is what I have come to realize, that have gained popularity in Christianity. One thing they always say is that, like you said, the image Jesus is now God. But notwithstanding that somebody created Jesus. Okay? If you going back behind Jesus there's somebody bigger than him. So if you go back into nature, what I use is that look at a tree and you ask yourself, how does it germinate? What happens to it? Even when you put a seed in the soil, what happens to it before it comes out? It means there is something that is more powerful that you can't see. So once you actually see yourself, look at other religion, African religion, like how do we call it? Each and every tribe has what he or she worship. Like these are deities. You see, they are through things that belongs to us. Because once you go through that, you also see God. But once someone comes to tell you that what you are doing is not good, stop it and do something that belongs to me, that person wants to give you something that belongs to him, and at the end of the day benefits. So what I always say, or what I do for myself, is I pick my choice and make sure I live according to it. Notwithstanding I always want to learn new things, because learning new things will help you know better. Because if you cling yourself to like, well, I am this and I hate everybody who is this, then it means that you are getting lost. Because I always say to my friends that we don't even know where heaven is. Someone says heaven is on earth, someone says heaven is above. It is only God who knows. If you die, you don't know where you are going. But it is your deeds that makes you even a better person. If you are a Hindu, you have to do the right thing. And if you even go through, you see that each and every religion teaches the right path. This is bad.
I want to ask you to wrap it up.
And this is good. So what I will always say is that, well, it is good being part, and I'm also learning new things, and I would always want to learn new things. That's what is part of me.
Okay. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. Now, I know everyone has much to share, but what I would like for you to do, if at all possible, is just keep it very short and succinct, that I have done this, I have done this. And even that type of paradigm, if you look at ancient Kemet, whenever, like on a tomb, you would read what they wrote on the tomb, it would all be their accomplishments, that I have done this, I have not, or what they have not done, I have not stolen, I have not made someone angry, I have done this. So I want yours to be just as succinct. I did this, I didn't do that. I did this, I didn't do that. And what you'll be doing is you'll be creating rules for yourself. Things I always do and things I never do. And you keep the objective that this is for African liberation. Right? Anyone else want to share? Very short actions.
I'll share something. All of our furniture, we had it made. We have a rattan living room set. We have a cane kitchen table.
You're better than Parliament of Ghana.
So all our furniture was made by Ghanaians, and it's Ghanaians who come to our house and criticize us for having that instead of buying those big ugly stuffed couches that get all dirt. I mean, to me the cane and the rattan is just beautiful. It's exquisite. So that's something we consciously did.
So that makes her better than the Parliament of Ghana, who went and got all of those, all that furniture from China, right? And these are things that I've also done. Mama Yawa and her husband were kind enough to allow me to stay in their house for rent-free for 2 years, which is how I was able to pay for University of Ghana. So let's give them a round of applause for that. And I gave Efogwami the contact of the ones who I was using also for furniture. And even here, these are made here. And that's a conscious choice, right? You could say I can either import something ugly from my enemies, or I can make something indigenously myself, right? Another thing, this is Mejat Wefa. This is what I'm using to teach my daughter Medu Necha by Dr. Raketi Amen. And she has Medu Necha as a spoken language, so you can learn how to Greek, do all of these things. So I would also encourage others, you can purchase this online and download it. I just printed it out, right? And these are things that you can do to learn your own language. And I also think about one thing that is very encouraging to me or inspires me. There's a church right across the street from me. And whenever they're broke, they have a church service. So they don't have any money to say, okay, we need to hustle some people out of their money. Come on, let's have a church service. They start singing. And I say, look at how hard they are working at a complete lie. Look at how hard they are working to defraud the people. So anytime they fire up their church service, it really makes me think about myself. Like, I need to work harder, right? They're going to be standing there for 4 hours praying to an imaginary white man, right? How come I'm not working out on the punching bag here? How come I'm not working on my translation here, right? So these are things that you can also do. It's just changing your mindset of how you see this thing. I could just, there you go again. Or I could say, look at how committed they are to insanity. How come I'm not being that committed right this second? This morning, they started playing the drum, so I went and got my libation. I went and got the calabash to do my libation. I said, they're reminding me that I didn't do my libation yet. That's what they're doing, right? I think you had something. Oh, no? Okay. More time? Just really quick, the Willie Lynch speech, which is what we have. Recently, a scholar, and I know Dr. Maulana is aware of this, but I don't want you going and researching and then finding something different. Kwabena Ashanti out of North Carolina, he came out a few years ago, 2013, 3 years ago now, and confessed to being the actual author of the Willie Lynch speech. But that was only after Professor Manu Ampim brought out some of these idiosyncrasies. It's a very good text, and I do want you to read it. But some of the things were like, in the speech he mentions things that didn't even exist that are found in the speech. So he talks about a self-refueling indoctrination. There weren't objects to refuel. This is before Industrial Revolution. You weren't fueling anything. So that wouldn't have been a term. He says foolproof, that's a very modern term. In the thing you'll see that black is capitalized, and that's something that's very common, after the 60s as a movement. So after Prof. Manu Ampim came out and really showed this, then Dr. Kwabena Ashanti, he wrote the book, The Psychotechnology of Brainwashing. That Dr. Ashanti, and I think you know him too from North Carolina, he came out and said, yes, I did write it, but I wrote it as a teaching tool so that people can understand how we're still divided. But he put it in the mouth of a white, so-called slave master trainer, in order to really just get that type of effect. So I don't want you to go on the internet and say, this is fake. No. It's just a teaching tool for you to understand that these divisions, it's almost like somebody did say, let's get them to say Christians against Muslims. Let's get them to say dark skin versus light skin. Let's get them to say Ewe versus Asante or whatever it is, right? So do take this, do read it, but just have that in mind that it's to be a teaching tool, right? Okay. And I'll hand it back over.
Let's give Dr. Kambon a round of applause for that powerful submission. So for those of us who were not able to be part of the first two meetings, at least we've had a recap of what really ensued. Dr. Maulana would like to make a submission before we go to the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, we have some guests here that I want to introduce, but before I do that, in my submission earlier, I just want to address a particular topic. Today is not the time for me to impart the topic, but I would like for you, within the framework of the notes you're taking today, is to set a date aside for this topic, and I'm going to mention it right now. What it is that I've done, you see, we're talking about our problem, the black problem, the African problem, and we're pointing the finger at those people who caused our problem and who has or is exacerbating our problem. Now, me as a historian and a researcher, when I was on TV Africa, they gave me the privilege to their library and asked me to go deep into our history to find out were we people before the Christian era united, and where did we come from? How did we interact with each other? The long and short of that is this. Some profound evidence came out of my research, and I want to share it eventually in this program with you. That is to say, going back to look at the origin of where did the Akan come from, where did the Ebe come from, where did the Ga Adangbe, before coming down in the sub-region. And what was our position as a people? Were we a unified people in that day and time? So some profound things came out in the sense that I have put together on a video, a documentary, and it's entitled, Why the African Race Has Fallen. We have fallen. And you need to know this because there are two particular documents that I just want to mention up front. And if you can insert this into the notes on a future dialogue we have on that, is that I discovered that we are out of our elements. We are children of the sun. And I discovered that there was a point in time that the European race created a virtual world, the virtual world that we're living in today, that we are not benefiting from the electromagnetic field of the sun, which by virtue of the fact we are melanated people, and we act, to make my point simple, like plants in photosynthesis. We're not benefiting from that. That's one aspect, that we cannot get the wholesomeness of what the Creator has given us unless we go back to the basics as children of the sun. The other factor, part two, is why did the African fall? And there is some identification that we have two sides of us. What I'm trying to say, we have within us a dominant gene and a recessive gene. And the white race comes out of us. So it simply means, to simplify my point, that we ourselves, to some degree, are a part of this problem, and we do not know it. And we have to search deep. And you cannot, in a contemporary, even in the last 2,000 years, you're not even hitting the surface of it. You've got to go back and look at the time of this great migration of our people. Where did we come from? And when you find in the area of the Fertile Crescent, which I have information on that, African ethnic groups that are in Ghana and Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire and in Senegal and Lesotho, South Africa, were in that area, Tigris, Euphrates, ancient Israel, then you will see how we interact with each other. I have done a document, and I want to introduce now before I finish this. I brought about 3 discs here, and I brought it to share with some of the organization heads who are here. And Mawuli, with someone from WA, that called. Mawuli, are you there?
Yeah.
I brought to give to this radio announcer in WA, but there are 2 other discs that I have that I would like to share with the heads of organizations here. And it is entitled, Why Did the African Race Fall? It's about 1 hour. And I'm dealing with Dr. Cress, the late Dr. Cress Welsing is in this video. And she says, and I want to emphasize the fact, man, you don't have a clue to what you're dealing with. And our people, what I'm saying is, we're talking this, you don't have a clue of what we are dealing with. It's something within us. You got to know what you're dealing with. So in my own humble way, I've put together this document, and there are 2 copies of it that I have available to give to the heads of some of the organizations that are here. So anyone
that opts to have a copy, you're welcome to have a copy of it. The other one, Mauli, is for the man up in Wa, okay? Now, having said that, I would like for you, Moses, to put on the lecturing agenda where I can have the platform at that time to actually impart this knowledge within an hour as a presentation, because I think our people need to know that. You know what I mean? We need to know what is it inside of us, because medical science, genealogy, genetics, beyond any shadow of doubt, has proven that the white race comes out of the black race. Now you need to know the genetic dynamics of that, because otherwise we're dealing in the micro world, what you see, but there's the macro world, what you see, but there's a micro world, microscopically, that we do not know. And this is what I'm looking at, and this is what Dr. Crescent Welsing, in my opinion, was talking about, that you don't have a clue when you're talking about the black agenda, what you're dealing with. These people that we call white people, you don't have a clue of what you're dealing with until you get to the micro world to identify this. And you have to go within yourself to get that knowledge. So I'd like to set up a date later where we have a platform for that. So if you don't mind, you can put it on the agenda, okay? The other thing was that I have some guests here. The brothers out by Kaswa have come in. They have a youth organization, and I spoke with them because we need to try to unite as many of our fragmented groups around Greater Accra, for that matter, in the whole 10 regions of Ghana. And I asked them to come to the program today. I will let them introduce themselves and say what their mission is. But the emphasis I put on bringing them here is that I want them to connect with us as one unit. You understand me? So, brother, whoever will speak on behalf of you, I would like you to get up and just identify yourselves, your aims, briefly, your objectives, and your mission. And I'll give you the platform right now to do that. Would you please?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Abdurrahman Sakon, and I'm the Vice President of Voice of Ghana Youth Foundation. And Voice of Ghana Youth Foundation is really a foundation that is here to unite the youth of Ghana. And we are here to look at all other things being equal. We are here to actually, we stand on three main pillars, actually: education, entrepreneurship, and then socialization. And we also look at other aspects of bringing our youth together so we could look into their welfare, what we do. And with our foundation, we are not actually religious centered. It is an open foundation that is here to actually look into what Ghana should go, because going forward, you see that Ghana is actually changing, and we want to actually do Africanization and Ghanaianization. So we actually want to collaborate with other organizations such as this, so that we would open forums for our members to also get the opportunity to learn new things as we are doing right now. So actually, in short, Voice of Ghana Youth Foundation is all about socialization, education, entrepreneurship, because we believe that we should learn new things. As we're talking about, Doctor talks about learning how to make our own things. We are also looking at bringing up the youth to actually go into beads. You know, our African beads are very good, and it's part of our culture. So we are looking at training our youth and also going into bead making beads back. I have a very nice young man who is able to make beads back. is able to weave beads into very nice handbags and all that, which symbolizes Africa. And so our organization is more based on what? Vocational training and training of our food. We look at even training our youth on actually catering, and we are also going deep into African catering, our Banku, Ghanaian food, is Nigerian food, and African food in general. So these are the things that we are looking at doing to actually help the youth. So Voice of Ghana is here to stay and is here to collaborate with actually the Ministry of the Future, so we could actually collaborate and learn new things and look at how best we can actually put or fuse the two together so we can move Ghana and Africa forward. I think for sure this is the mission of Voice of Ghana.
Yes, we thank you very much. Also, we have Dr. Z and Dr. Sharita. Dr. Z is one of our resource persons for the Ministry of the Future, and she will pass the comments before we.
Good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Zelena Setti, and I'm the visionary of an educational foundation called the African Renaissance Foundation. And we have a website, what we call an African Classics website, that every young person in Ghana should be exposed to. And if you see me later, I'll make sure you get the website. Everything that you've heard talked about here, just about, is on that website. So you can go there and get more information. And we also have conscious study groups on the campus here. And they go on. They meet once a month when school is in session. So what I would like is for all the people, I'm going to leave, I have some soap here, Ancient Royal Black Soap. We produce it as a fundraiser for the foundation. And there is also economic opportunity for people to sell the soap and get an income. So I would like, I'm going to leave a sheet of paper here. We're going to start a What's Up group very, very soon. Wonderful. That's the website. So that is the website. And does it have the www address there?
arf-int.net. You can do it with or without the www.
Okay.
So you can see it here, arf-int.net.
And it really is a wealth of information, and there are free ebooks that you can download on the website by these African scholars that you need to know about. Powerful, powerful ebooks. And I really recommend that you download these books and start studying. The other thing I want to say is that I also am a reader. I do African reading, so I may be able to help your group with that endeavor. And like I say, for those who are serious about creating an income and economics for themselves, we have an opportunity. How did you get the soap and shirt? It's a lakasane, and it's very, very special. It's very enriched with aloe vera oil. And so the soap is just good. Once you get a customer and they begin to use the soap, they just become your customer. And it's available today. It's 15 Ghana cedis for anybody who would like some.
I'll give a testimony to it. It's excellent. We just bought some last week and we've been using it. This isn't our first time buying it, so we're long-time customers. So yes, well.
So again, I'm going to leave this sheet of paper and it has your name, your what's up. If you want to be a part of the what's up group on a daily basis, I will be giving you just some of the things that we've talked about and more on the what's up channel. So we just sign the back of this stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
just real fast. I thought we would wait to the end. I just wanted to make an announcement. I wasn't here at the last few meetings, but this has been my ReAfrikanization thing that I've done. First of all, moving to Ghana and then trying to create a platform to bring diasporan Africans and continental Africans together. So here we have African Culture and Wellness Festival. It's taking place February 13th at the Eburi Botanical Gardens. We're bringing our special artists, guests, dub poet Muta Baruka, and Dr. Aris Latham, which is a master raw food vegan chef. A raw food vegan chef is a vegetarian who only eats plant-based diet, no animals or animal byproducts, but everything is raw. Everything is, in a raw form, no heat, and it's not cooked or processed. So he's a master chef. He's the master of masters. He's one of my teachers as well. And he's been noted to be the man who started the raw food movement across the world. He's very, very well respected in the vegetarian chef, community. We're bringing him here because the festival, when it comes down to the food side, is all vegan, all vegetarian. Whether it's continental or international, everything is vegetarian. And we're bringing him here to show us the highest level of eating. In other words, this is something that helps you to reverse disease and prevent disease. Also to keep you at a higher divine or spiritual level, as well, when it comes down to this type of eating. He's now on his, I'm trying to keep up, 69th day of doing a juice fast, and he just ran 2 marathons last month. And I think he's about 60-something, 65, somewhere between 65 and 70. And I've been knowing him maybe about 20 years, and the man's food is on another level. Okay, so that's us there. So you can always go to the website, acoff.com. We do have vending available. We have 4 different expos: the African Marketplace, the African Natural Beauty Expo, Natural African Beauty Expo, the Vegan All-Stars Food Court, and the Healers Village. So if you fall under any of those categories, or you know someone, then you can come. It's 150 Ghana cedis for the day. It starts 9 a.m. in the morning with yoga, going into other different types of fitness. Like we have Dr. Kambon that's going to be doing capoeira. And we'll have Kemetic yoga, not just yoga, we'll have Kemetic yoga, which is more of an ancient Egypt type yoga, which, yoga came from, just like martial arts, yoga also came from Africa. And then we'll have people speaking on traditional, African traditional medicine, on practical uses that we can have in our homes. So we're not so quick to run to the doctors when we can run to the bush first. And things that's practical, not something that's just so mystical and you don't know what to do. Something you can do practical in your house today. So it'll be a series of different workshops: African traditional dance, Afrobics, a workshop on dealing with natural ways to take care of the hair and the skin using natural natural products as opposed to chemicals. And we'll also talk about the effects of chemicals on the body and how it causes lots of diseases. And then we'll have also a children's village, so it's definitely a family, oriented atmosphere. There'll be lots of different things that children would be doing in reference to African arts and crafts. Not just making some little flowers or something, those little, what do you call those little things that the Japanese people make? None of those type of things. There'll be something, African. And then there will also be some youth empowerment, speeches going on from some different people that will come and talk to the youth. And then from 6 to 12 midnight is when we'll have our concert with our special guest Muta Baruka and some local artists, including Eli Baba, which has always been part of ACOF, Afrobeat, John Germain, who's R&B artist, Ghanaian R&B artist out of the UK, and then Reggae Rising, which is a collaboration of different reggae artists here, and some other artists. So it's gonna, and then we have some nice poetry. We'll have one of our last poets that will be there, because we definitely want the poets to represent, because this is Mutabaruka. And a lot of different things, a lot of things in store, things that are a little bit unusual. We'll have some excerpts from some different activists or historians, that will be playing in between. Now, before the festival itself, we have opening ceremonies. It's a limited amount of space, so you have to come, first serve. It's 30 Ghana CDs. And at the opening ceremonies, we're going to be featuring Dr. Aris Latham's cuisine. So you get a chance to taste what raw food cuisine is. So you'll have, hopefully we'll be able to get some pizza and pies and all these different things, but nothing is cooked. Everything is done in a dehydrator, food processor, juicer, or a blender. And the food is well worth 100 Ghana cedis, actually. That's no joke. It's worth 100 Ghana cedis, because the food is going to be so rich and kind of expensive because of nuts and things like that. So you'll get a chance to taste food on its highest vibration. We'll have some very dynamic speakers. We have yours truly as our host, for the night. We'll have entertainment, poetry, and it's going to be a nice night. So the opening ceremonies will be at Nubuke Foundation in East Legon, not far from the Minsvik Hotel. And that's going to be, again, February 12th from 6 to 9 p.m. So if you have any questions, you can always go to the website. Also, my phone number and WhatsApp is on the flyer. Please tell every soul that you can, because it's definitely going to be something that's going to be life-changing. It's already life-changing for me. I mean, I put this thing together, but this year I'm already going through so many different highs. And highs. I won't say lows, because the lows, I just bounce back up. If it hit me, I just bounce back up, So it's been a really spiritual journey, this particular festival, and I know it's going to be in line with our theme, which is high frequency living. And even when you get there to the gate, you're coming into the high frequency zone. So leave all your diseases and your problems and your wahala, at the gate, and you're going to come in and have a good time, and we're going to be able to have a really serious exchange to remember for a lifetime to come. So I hope you all can come. Bring your friends, and bring your enemies too.
Yes, we thank Dr. Sherita very much. On the next agenda, we decided to form an editorial committee, so that as we have a monthly meeting, we can have a monthly newsletter that can disseminate the information that we get here to the world. But looking at the fact that most of our research heads are not here, we did form a research group, and we also encourage every member to join one of the groups, either economic, religion, and education. In our subsequent meeting, the groups will be making their reports available to us to know what their findings and their recommendations are. And also, next month is Black History Month. February is Black History Month, and we see Pratt, who was supposed to lead today's discussion, asked that he be rescheduled to another time. So hopefully I'm going to visit his office, and based on the discussion, if it's convenient for him to be on the 29th, we fix that. And we'll also communicate to members anything that transpires at this end. I would like to know if any member has any other thing to say, contribution or submission to add to the program before we take our closing remarks.
All right, I wanted to share this for those who may not know about this site. This isn't my own site. This is called Library Genesis, gen.lib.rus.ec. And this is an online library. It has lots of books as ebook form, books that you can't get anywhere, and if you did see it anywhere, it would be beyond what any of us can pay put together. So like this book is Egyptian grammar, as we've been talking about Medu Neter. This book, if you want to buy it, you will pay $1,000 or more, right? I happen to have gotten it in other ways that I won't share. But if you do a search for Egyptian, you will find this book. You will find this book is called A Concise Dictionary of Middle Egyptian by Faulkner. Again, this would be $500 or more. You can find this in a PDF form that you can, it's not only that you can put on your computer, you can search inside of it for any word that you want to know, right? So this is a good resource. You can find books by Kwame Nkrumah on here. You can find books by Amilcar Cabral on here. You can find books by every single author you've ever heard of. And it's not necessarily legal, per se, because they don't go through publishers, but this is something to make information freely available that you otherwise would never get. So if you want to learn Medu Neter, just go here and start learning today. If you want to learn about any of your great African ancestors who we've mentioned, just go to this website, type in your search, and 9 times out of 10 you'll find the book that you're looking for. And if you can't find it here, there are other ways, and you come see me about those other ways. So that's that. Also, I wanted to mention what we mentioned before. This is Abibi Tumikasa. I'll pass this around. We have a Kiswahili class starting tomorrow. If you go there, we also have other languages. We teach Medu Neter, a brother out of the Medu Neter study group, and also ASCAC, Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. Bonochi Montgomery teaches Medu Neter on the site. Chi, Yoruba, Wolof, I teach those 3. We also have a specialist here who does Ewe. We have a specialist here who does Ga. So there are various things. We deal with African languages, and that's part of our ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization. And also, even for those who may know those languages that I've mentioned, you may not know how to write it correctly. So you can also come to the website. You can just click on the Akan section, go to the forums, click on the Akan section, and you will see everything written in impeccable Chi. If you don't know where Meda and Ase, Meda say where it splits, and you just write it as one thing, you can find out how to write it correctly. So it's not only, oh, these people need to learn. No, you too, you need to learn, right? People say, oh, I didn't study it, I just learned it. Well, that's bad. In Britain, they are learning English in school. They are native English people, British people, but they say we need to learn our own language, and they study it all the way to PhD. In the U.S., the same thing. But we look at our thing and we say, well, I just learned it on Trotro. Whereas in previous times, you would have been learning it in traditional court setting. You would have been learning it at Udla, you would have been learning it at Akom. Now you're not going to any of those things, so when will you learn it again? So that's just that. This is Abibi Tumikasa, that translates to Black Power language. When I came here, I didn't find anyone talking about Black Power or African liberation in African languages. So that's what this is. We talk about African liberation in African languages. That's that. This is what the forums look like once you click on forums. As I mentioned, over 1.2 million users to this forum. You'll see broken up by languages that we focus on. Also Kikongo, we have a specialist who teaches Kikongo. And then all of these areas that we talked about in the Kambon, economics, education, health, history, math and science, military, nation building, philosophy, politics, repatriation, spirituality, society, all of those areas, thousands and thousands of resources, PDFs that you can't find anywhere, the best of the best, the cream of the crop that we've all collated here. You can find those. Also, if you're interested in homeschooling, you can support my daughter, amakambon.com. You can look at her videos. She also does a vegan food preparation video series where she teaches how to do fruit kebabs and other things as well. So this is her website. And I think that's, oh yeah, and finally, Abibi Fahundie. Again, because when I came to Ghana in 1998, first time, I didn't find people talking about African liberation in African languages. They said we have to speak English to talk about African liberation. All right, so you're saying you want to climb a tree and you're digging a hole. You're saying you want to go to the east bank of the river and you're heading due west. That's not the shortest way. If you want African liberation, let's start talking about it in our own languages. So that's what this is about, Abibi Fahundie, the capoeira. You can look at some of the videos. You can join us. We do the classes here at the between the music and dance departments right across the street on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Mama Z did it, and she did an excellent job. She did better than her brother who's 21 years old. I was like, man, she's getting it. She's getting the spins. She's getting the turns. Man. So don't say I'm too old. Don't say I'm too out of shape. Don't say I'm too ugly. Don't say I'm too pretty. You're too African not to come, right? So please do come, and that's Habibi Fahundie, African Liberation Capoeira, and we'll be doing it at ACOF as well. And that's my...
Yes, we will take some remarks from Dr. Maulana.
Well, let Maul, you want to make a question?
Please, concerning the festival, is a day or a week, about 13
That's the tour part.
Yeah, we do a tour before, but the actual festival is just on the 13th.
What I was going to suggest, we're going into the month of African History Month. Has the Ministry of the Future thought about trying during the interval to have at least one, maybe two programs within the whole month of Africa? Or we just want to wait until our regular time comes around, the last Sunday of February? I mean, we're going into African History Month. I would like to introduce a topic, the resurrection of Christ. I think that needs to be clarified. Why, yes. I would like to do that particular program to show the true meaning and physical emphasis behind the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I have the material to do it, but if we could fit a time in, you know what I mean, in the month of February. I don't think we should just wait until, you know, the whole month of February is coming up. We wait till the last minute to do the Ministry of the Future. There's room to do maybe one or two other programs. That's one thing. And this magazine, Moses, my brother, do you have a broken leg or a broken ankle? You've been dragging your feet, Charlie. But I would like to make a recommendation here that I want to take charge. My time is limited, but to show the passion that I have in this particular subject, the magazine, because I recommended that we should have a newsletter or a magazine. You know, the pen is powerful. And so I'm recommending that where you have come thus far with the information, and you have your reasons, like you said, you know, you don't have a computer. And matter of fact, I think we need to put it on the table again. If there's anybody in the group here that can help him to loan a laptop to Moses, because he is really the workhorse of this organization. And he doesn't have a laptop. The one that he had is broken. But I'm suggesting, Moses, and on this platform today, hand me the information on how far you have come. Give me about 5 days, and I guarantee you I will come out with a magazine. Do you hear me? Yes. Also, I wanted to make the recommendation, too. You know, we are good at coming together, talking about the splendid things that need to be done. But we are very poor when it goes into our pocket to contribute to these things. You can do nothing without money. I know we are not economically empowered, but at least we should be able to contribute something on this table today to this particular forum, because time is money, and this young brother here who's coordinating this needs some kinds of money for the maintenance of the things that have to be done. So I am saying right now, let us pass the hat and make a contribution to the Ministry of the Future so that the coordinator, we can make it a little bit easier for him to do what he has to do. Moses.
Really quick, last announcement, things that are going on in African Studies for Black History Month. On the 11th, right here upstairs, we're going to have a showing of Fruitvale Station, and that is talking about Oscar Grant, a brother in Oakland who was shot in the back by the police, unarmed. They just shot him. He was already restrained, laying down flat on the ground, prostrate, and they shot him in the back. and that's going to be within the framework of the Black Lives Matter movement. Oftentimes people who are here say, oh, black people are getting shot left, right, front, and center. They must have done something wrong. A lot of people, you'll get that all of the time. And it's just ignorance. They don't know that basically Europeans do whatever they want to because they can, because they know that there will be no repercussion. Recently in Oklahoma, for the first time that I can remember since I was born, a white police officer was convicted of raping at least a dozen black women. Not because they did anything wrong, but because he was an evil white cave beast, and that's what evil white cave beasts do. So again, just to frame these things so that we can understand each other. Last year we had a film festival. So that's one single film. Later on in the month, on the 23rd, which should be a Tuesday. If it's not, it's whatever Tuesday is closest to that. We're going to have a week of films. And that's the African World Diaspora Film Festival. And we'll send that out. Moses will send the information. But that is documentaries from all throughout the world. African people from Brazil, from the continent, from the U.S., from UK, Europe. All of them submit their films, and the best ones get chosen. So Institute of African Studies will be one of those. Again, it's going to start on that Tuesday at the 23rd, or if it's the 22nd, whatever that Tuesday is, it will be that, and it will be a week long. Go through Tuesday through Saturday, so 23rd through 27th. That should be. And then finally, on the 25th, we're organizing the author Aikwe Ama, who wrote 2,000 Seasons, The Healers, Kemet and the House of Life, and so many others. It's going to be 5 locations. He's based in Popengrin, Senegal, and we are going to stream him live. It's basically a joint thing between Morehouse College and Senegal and Aikwe Ama. The president of Morehouse College assigned one of his most powerful books, The Healers, to every single student at the school, which is just phenomenal, because when I was there, you would never get anything like that. They were just creating Morehouse Negroes, not anything else. But he assigned it, so he wants to have a dialogue with this visionary, brilliant African, and we will be able to stream and live and be part of that. We'll be able to submit our questions live, and we'll be part of that, similar to what we did with Roy Ajiman, who had the Mugabe movie for Kwanzaa. So that will be coming up on February 25th. So stick close to African Studies. We are trying to do this work of African liberation. We are not playing. We are serious. We're about every single area of life, and we hope that you will be as well. Yeah.
Yes. Now, I want to put this on the table because, to me, my realization, I realized that there are too much young African youth groups rising. So, what can we do in order, if it's one annual festival or something, to bring all the youths all over, if it be your Ghana or within Africa or something, how I know financial to will be challenging, but this idea that we are putting on the table to see how can we have an annual African youth program. It can be in various programs, but it can maybe a week or something long celebrations. Because I realize now there are too much young African youth who are coming up or springing up in various parts of the country.
I have a suggestion on that. Why don't we have an annual African Youth Interaction Workshop? A workshop that goes on for 3 to 5 days. In other words, an annual African Youth Interaction Workshop. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Yeah, put it out there, and I think it will come. And the venue, I don't know, you choose a venue, whether it be here at Legon, Institute of African Studies, or what?
I think we could do that. I was going to make another suggestion, because in the spirit of what you're saying there are some that are already there, and now these ones are coming up that are disconnected. I would say, because we have this ACOF festival, I like the workshop idea because it's very tangible, whatever they work on. But I would suggest, in the meantime, get these youth groups to support ACOF. Why are we going to do something different when we already have something that we can support? Have all the youth groups come here and make that a venue where the youth are supporting something that's already in existence, as opposed to something new springing up.
We have year-round programs too. So one of them that we're going to be launching at the event is called Peanut Butter Kids, and it has to do with preserving African arts, and crafts, music, and things like that. The ages that we had targeted was from age 5 to like 16, dealing with a young range, and we're meeting every first Saturday of the month, 10 to 1, at the Botanical Gardens. If you guys know Empress Imira, she has a store that she just opened up, and it'll be on lawn number 9. So you get more information about it at the festival at the Children's Village.
Yes, we thank our resource persons and everybody who made it to today's meeting. What I'd like to say is that we should do well to extend the information that we have got here to others. We should be able to disseminate the information such that not only us, we are not only responsible to fulfill all the mandates required of us in ReAfrikanization and Dewhitenization process, but individually, if we practice what we have learned here and others learn to practice it on a social level, then it's like we are achieving it in a collective form. So we encourage that we disseminate the information here and also we practice what we have learned. As Dr. Kambon has begun by introducing how to get your own underpants. We should also be interested in getting, in his first report, he said we should be producers of what we consume and consumers of what we produce. And I think we should make that practicable. Also, I encourage each one of us to join one of the research groups. We have education, the education group, we have the religion and the economic group. Mrs. Baptista is the head of the education group, so if you are interested, unfortunately, the members responsible for the religion and economic group are absent, but if you are interested, you submit your name to me. I can give their contacts to you so that you follow up on how far they have reached. Having said that, we are grateful that we could all meet today for this discussion. I think we can meet outside for a good discussion. I thank you all for coming.
Can I say something very brief? It probably was said at the previous meetings, but it has not been mentioned today. I lived in Ghana in the early 70s for 5 years, and one of the things that made me love and gravitate to Ghana was the respect and how polite and friendly Ghanaians were. Now, I've recently moved back, and it's not like that. I mean, in the market, you're just elbowed. You're not. It's. I just wish that we could try to bring back respect for each other, for human beings. Period. This selfishness. People don't even want to stop at a red light. Motorbike riders are out of control. They just have no respect for anybody. I mean, where is respect? We need that back. It's very important. And when young children are seeing all this lawlessness, they're going to gravitate to it because they admire adults. They want to do what adults do. So I think we have to lead by example in terms of setting a better example for our young people in terms of respect. I personally would love to see that back high on the list of Ghanaian attributes. Now Ghanaians, well, I would say, generalize and say Ghanaians, but people in Ghana right now are very impatient on every level of life. And in fact, why?
Well, if I can just say something to address that just briefly, the socio-cultural dimension of Ghanaian life, what it was then as opposed to it is right now, is tied to the economic deprivation within the society. When you look at the time you were here in the 70s, the economic fabric of the society was a lot different in terms of Ghanaians' empowerment, you know what I mean, than what it is now. The city, the value of the city now, and also with external influence. The deeper that we allow Europeans to come into our society, the more of these type issues you're talking about, indiscipline in this society today is a hallmark. Indiscipline. Whereas we know, I can go back 30 years ago in Ghana, and it was different in terms of how we relate to each other. But then again, you didn't see the deep European influence, visibly in the society then that you do now. So the deeper they get inside of our society, you understand what I'm saying, and the controlling of the economic fabric of the society, that has a direct effect upon the socio-cultural relationships that we have with each other. Until that change, we have to get what I mentioned earlier, we have to get control of our economic resources. This is where it begins.
Just a follow-up to what we're discussing right now. I think this February 24th is the 50th anniversary of the coup that overthrew Osajifo, and the context of the divergence that we took. We came to a Y junction and we came down this path, and so the discipline that Mrs. Tupra is talking about and the erosion of our cultural values. Osajifo was somebody who had respected the arts, the sciences, who poured libation when he went to foreign countries, right there at the airport on the tarmac, took culture with him. The overthrow of that regime had such a significant impact on us as a people. So this year, the 24th of February, let's keep in our minds, educate our children, because what's happening in Ghana is that the image of Osajifo has been relegated to a lower class. We want to believe that capitalism is the way. We want to believe that the ideals that they live for are ridiculous. People actually even try and push that. Look, how old are those values? Don't you want to let go? These are old men. But that is exactly the solution to our problems. So all the people who are pushing for politics today, none of them talk about the review of the value of our resources, the ownership of our minds, the basic important structural things that will bring change to this country. So you don't hear it on the lips of any of the politicians who want power, but those are the drastic things that will make change. You can't have gold and you continue to get 2% and believe in miracles. It doesn't happen. Neither will we get if we're getting 13% from our oil. So the overthrow of Osajifo was of great significance to this country, and that's why the indiscipline. Osajifo had young pioneers, so even children were proud of the nation. Children were brought up to defend the nation. It would have been children who would report a Chinese man in the forest today that there's a Chinese man behind that river with his caterpillar. Today the Chinese men pass the police roadblocks, the regional security coordinators all see these heavy moving caterpillars in the areas. Nothing says, because people don't care about Ghana anymore. Our cultural values have been lost and we are owned by those who overthrew us in that interest. So never ever believe anybody who wants to relegate the ideas of Osajifo to the background and say they are old people, these are ideas from the thing, he was a dictator. Every people have advanced because they pursued what they believed in. And they hate that because Osajifo would have had us having kantankas back in the day, would have had atomic energy back in the day, and all sorts of advancements. So 24th February, let's celebrate and teach your children. Don't let people rewrite the history of Ghana. These are people who must always hold highly.
Also, I've made the Wi-Fi password available. What I would like for everyone who has either an Android phone or an Apple phone is to download the Abibi Tumikasa app. And on top of that, I've made a recording of today's session. I will share it only on Abibi Tumikasa. So once you download the app, you will have access to that.
And I'm passing around the What's Up sign-up sheet for the African Renaissance Club.
Please,
so if you could do that quickly, because I need to explain.
Please, the Kambon assignment will receive it next month. Please, let's get it.
What is that?
That's what you will ReAfrikanize and Dewhitenization.
Is it possible to get a soft copy of that, the template?
Not yet.
Yeah. The next meeting is 29 February 2016. 29 February.
What day is the next one?
29.
29. Yes.
Okay.
That's a Monday, yeah?
And if anybody wants to make a donation,
29th February is a sorry, is that 29th February? Yeah.
the last
That's a Monday.
Sunday is 29.
It's a Monday, yeah?
No, it's a Sunday.